2 nights ago, UC Davis's student government voted to ask university officials to divest from businesses connected to Israel. These fraternity brothers say that issue elicited hate speech.
Right after that happened, there was all sorts of stuff on Twitter and Facebook that was pretty hateful against Jews, and, now that there's this, it's pretty upsetting.
Our coalition is on the offensive. ISIL is on the defensive, and ISIL is going to lose. Its barbaric murders of so many people, including American hostages, are a desperate and revolting attempt to strike fear in the hearts of people it can never possibly win over by its ideas or its ideology, because it offers nothing but misery and death and destruction. And with vile groups like this, there is only one option. With our allies and partners, we are going to degrade and ultimately destroy this terrorist group. Today, my administration submitted a draft resolution to Congress to authorize the use of force against ISIL.
This is not getting discussed on the mainstream media. Not only are they wrong legally, but the fact that they would do this is outrageous. This is an overreaction and really nonsense. How would you react if this was your son or your daughter? It's the offense of knowing the truth. It's the offense of having an alternate worldview. Saying God bless you to someone is not a violation of the law.
Hey, welcome to the broadcast, everyone. Our television audience is with us, and we're thrilled they are. Jordan's in our studios in Washington, D.C. We've got an ongoing situation right now on two fronts, and they're both related. You've got this increased hostility towards Jewish students in the United States on major university campuses. We've handled 2 cases in just the last couple of weeks, one in California, one in Illinois. We got them both resolved successfully, but the persecution that's aimed at these Jewish students group by oftentimes pro-Palestinian organizations. You got them screaming Allah Akbar at one meeting in California. In Chicago, Jewish students had to be escorted with police protection and security because of threats, just because they were Jewish. Nazi symbols painted on Jewish fraternity houses. All of this is going on at the same time. So that's happening on America's campuses. Jordan, at the same time, the president won't call what happened in France last month an act of targeted jihadist terrorism against Jews.
That's right. He called it a random act. And, again, this is a time when he's submitting a war resolution to Congress, an authorization for the use of military force, a watered-down one. It's interesting to see a president who has had such an expansive view of executive power go to Congress with this authorization for use of force against ISIS and its supporters and ask for less power. This is the one time, and not only trying to constrain the current president, but future presidents as well.
Yeah, this is, folks, this is a really serious situation, and one that's going to galvanize a lot of, and is already galvanizing a lot of interest. We have 82,591 people have signed on for our petition. We're getting close to 100,000, 2 more days to get there. After the break, we've got a great guest, Dr. Zuhdi Jasser. He has got a brand new book out called The Battle for the Soul of Islam. You're going to want to hear from him on this. It's going to be a great guest. And if you want to sign on to the petition, you could do that as well at aclj.org or 1-877-989-2255. That's aclj.org, aclj.org, or 1-877-989-2255. That is a petition to stand with these Jewish groups. We've got legislation moving through right now. So things are moving, but we need to hear from you. We want to get to 100,000. aclj.org or 877-989-2255.
There's a disturbing development occurring at our nation's colleges and universities. Jewish students are under attack on America's campuses. In California, Muslim students chant Allah Akbar at Jewish students at an open meeting. In Chicago, Jewish students need police protection from pro-Palestinian students. Nazi symbols are painted on a Jewish fraternity. Radical professors pledge to boycott Israel scholars and punish Jewish students. Our universities are overrun with anti-Israel propaganda. At the ACLJ, we're fighting for Jewish students on campus, winning cases and stopping boycotts. But it's time the Obama administration stepped up. It's time the Obama administration's Department of Education enforced the law to protect American Jews from violence, intimidation, and unlawful discrimination. Add your name to our petition now. Call 1-877-989-2255. That's 1-877-989-2255, or add your name online, aclj.org.
Welcome back to the broadcast, everyone. It's called BDS, Boycott, Divest, and Sanctions, and it's aimed at Israel, and it's happening on the American Academy in huge proportions right now. And what you've got is radical professors pledging to boycott Israeli scholars, punish Jewish students, and punish Christian students that are supporting those Jewish students. We're taking action on this to end this discrimination, and we want you to sign on this petition at aclj.org or 1-877-989-2255. That's aclj.org or 877-989-2255. We're very fortunate to have on the phone with us right now a good friend, Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, who's got a book out called A Battle for the Soul of Islam, an American Muslim Patriot's Fight to Save His Faith. He's been on Fox News. Oh, I think you're on Fox News more than I am, and I'm on a pretty good bit there, Dr. Jasser. So it's great having you, Zuhdi. Thanks for being with us today.
Oh, it's great to be with you, and you paved the path for me, so thank you.
All right. Let me ask you first about the president's statements as it relates to what is happening with ISIS, what is happening also in a situation which I think this in France calling these random acts. Tell me about your reaction to this as someone of faith who is trying to challenge your own faith community to get its act together.
Yeah, you know, the definition of a phobia is an irrational fear of the unknown. So from an American perspective, if you really believe that there is such a thing as Islamophobia, which I disagree with as a concept, but if you believe that, then you have to name it to begin to take away the shroud of fear of that which doesn't exist. More importantly, though, as a Muslim and looking at global security, if you want reformists to fix the problem within the House of Islam, the only way you can enable us is to identify it as an ideology, political Islam. And ultimately, if we're going to reform and modernize and have a movement against theocracy and what I call the new evil empire, which is the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, it's wholly absurd for the president to say the Islamic State is not Islamic, and yet the Islamic Republic of Iran, the Saudi government, which is a theocracy, the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, all these governments with draconian apostasy and anti-blasphemy laws that treat minorities in ways because of Sharia law, do it under the name of Islam, and yet we don't call them on it. So to say it's not Islam is not only denial, but if you say where's the voices of reform, the biggest obstruction to that is Western leaders like President Obama that don't engage the reformers. And while he was hugging the new king of Saudi Arabia, that government was whipping Muslims like me, like Raif Badawi. And Natan Sharansky had a great piece in the Post last week and said, we need to go back to what we did against the Soviets and begin to identify prisoners of conscience who are getting whipped for insulting Islam. And it almost seems like we're doing the same blasphemy laws in America.
Well, we almost do it by acquiescence and certainly not by objecting. Let me ask you this. Zuhdi, you served as a lieutenant commander in the United States Navy. You know the military. We've got the president asked for an authorization yesterday, but made it very clear, no boots on the ground. Which to me, why would you single that to an enemy? And I've made this statement that we're not just fighting terrorist groups, we're fighting jihadist armies right now. And we better be aware that groups like ISIS, I've written on this, I know you've talked about it and written on it as well. These groups are armies. This is different than Al-Qaeda. These are armies. They're not hiding in caves, and we've got to treat them and respond to them like an army with overwhelming force. But you're a military guy. I'm not. What's your sense of this?
I'm so glad you brought this up. The senior brass in the military have been talking behind the scenes, which they usually don't do, saying how this has been micromanaged from the White House, that they can't run the operations to defeat this army the way they should. So on the one hand, we've been bombing them supposedly for how long? And now you see the King of Jordan talk about really decimating them because they realize we're not doing what needs to be done, number one. Number two, my gut tells me that this is sort of what happened with Syria a year and a half ago, where he did the authorization simply because he wanted an excuse to abandon the bombing he was doing, to blame it on Congress and say that, well, they didn't pass it, so then I don't have to continue this fake red line that I'm going to cross again. So, I think this is all just political maneuvering. I think that ultimately we're not fighting the war like we should. Every military analyst has said that we need to be much more aggressive, number two. Number three, Jay, is that you can't defeat ISIS without defeating Assad. Imagine, trying to defeat an enemy where on the ground you have a bigger enemy, which is the government of Syria, which is killing the moderates and not addressing the problem, because we have to address the ISIS radicals, and they're using that as an excuse for a military authoritarian regime.
Jordan, I know you've got a question for Zuhdi.
That's right, Dr. Jasser. I wanted to talk about something that came out of the State Department briefing yesterday, and it was a question by a reporter about the fact that is the U.S. being run out of town in the Middle East? And this is a time we've tried to change our engagement, try to change the terminology used, try to really work with, since the Arab Spring, a lot of these even groups that have Islamist leanings, and try to work with them. And yet you look at what's happened diplomatically, and it's not just our embassy in Syria, then Libya, and now Yemen yesterday. So 3 embassies in places where the Arab Spring, and of course there's conflict ongoing. But is this Obama strategy backfiring in a way that not even just with groups like ISIS, but in a long-term strategy of how to deal with majority Muslim nations in the Middle East?
Well, I don't think we're being run out of town. I think we are running out of town. That's sort of the policy. The Rice speech to Brookings last week was that the new policy is strategic patience, which basically I would call a Darwin doctrine, which is to let the most evil thrive. And ultimately, the futures of the Middle East are neither the old oligarchical dictatorships or the Islamists that are filling in this vacuum. And we need a liberty doctrine. And ultimately, the president said it on that interview he did earlier last week, where he basically said that it's not in our national security interest to be there. I mean, that narrative is not only wholly wrong, it is putting us in liability. I mean, we saw Paris, we saw Ottawa, Boston bombings. The ISIS guys are coming back. If they can't get over there because of travel restrictions, they're going to do their acts here. And then the Middle East, that you see Russia now talking to al-Sisi about nuclear armamentation yesterday. You see Iran feeling unhinged because they don't see us as a threat by their annexation of Syria. Iraq is disappearing to Iran. So all of that being said, that is a national security crisis, and I don't see how he doesn't see that. And they're stuck in this penchant that somehow, because of the way he campaigned in 2008, that we're going to pull out of Afghanistan and Iraq. By God, he's going to do that no matter what states he leaves in 2016.
Dr. Jasser, we appreciate it. Zuhdi, thank you for being on the broadcast. Thank you for being a reasoned voice also in this debate. I really have enjoyed getting to know you and watching you. We're going to be focusing. We have a program at Oxford University. I'm going to email you offline here where we do deal with a lot of these issues. I want to get you over there to lecture to the lawyers come in from all over and public policy people all over the world. The book is A Battle for the Soul of Islam. It's by Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, who I think is the most rational voice out in the country right now on these topics. Thanks for being with us again. We appreciate it, Zuhdi.
God bless. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. And folks, Jordan, you've interviewed Zuhdi a lot. He is the reformer in that movement.
That's right. And he'll be very honest when he talks about if you ask him about the more voices and that he has to, it's what he does very dangerous. It's patriotic by speaking out and going against the grain, not being afraid to speak out and do so. And he's trying to encourage more people to do the same thing.
He called it the new anti-Semitism. The scripture says in Genesis, I will bless those that bless thee, talking about Israel, curse those that curse thee. That's the scriptural admonition. I want you to bless the Jewish students in American public school campuses, the Israeli professors. You could do that by signing this petition right now at aclj.org or 1-877-989-2255. That's aclj.org or 1-877-989-2255. I'm going to urge you to sign on to that petition today as we're crossing 85,000 signatures on our way to 100,000. aclj.org or 1-877-989-2255 to end discrimination against Jews, for that matter for Christian students as well, on these campuses around the country. aclj.org or 877-989-2255. Back with more in a moment.
There's a disturbing development occurring at our nation's colleges and universities. Jewish students are under attack on America's campuses. In California, Muslim students chant Allah Akbar at Jewish students at an open meeting. In Chicago, Jewish students need police protection from pro-Palestinian students. Nazi symbols are painted on a Jewish fraternity. Radical professors pledge to boycott Israel scholars and punish Jewish students. Our universities are overrun with anti-Israel propaganda. At the ACLU ACLJ, we're fighting for Jewish students on campus, winning cases and stopping boycotts. But it's time the Obama administration stepped up. It's time the Obama administration's Department of Education enforced the law to protect American Jews from violence, intimidation, and unlawful discrimination. Add your name to our petition now. Call 1-877-989-2255. That's 1-877-989-2255, or add your name online, aclj.org.
We have a brand new movie that's going to be coming out called Let My People Go. It's about persecution of Christians around the globe. Take a look at this preview.
Our dad used to be here swinging us in circles, and that was our favorite. That's our favorite part. My favorite page is this one because my dad's holding me, and it's been a long time since he did.
Religious persecution is a situation where your life is literally put in jeopardy simply because of what you believe.
I use the term religious cleansing now because it's the eradication of the entire Christian presence in country after country.
Every successive movement is becoming more vicious, more barbaric, and more savage than the previous one.
People are being killed because of their faith.
The level of persecution is on the rise. It's being reported more, we're seeing it, and we can see the imagery, we can see the brutality.
It's like it's open season on Christians.
Asia Bibi is a Christian woman on death row. She's been in prison in Pakistan since '09.
Pastor Youssef Nader Khan was an Iranian Christian pastor, and he was in prison because of his work as a Christian.
Suddenly this group appears, this group who wants to slaughter all of our people.
New concerns for the safety of American pastor Saeed Abedini, sentenced this week to 8 years in Iran's most brutal prison, accused of illegally practicing his Christian faith.
They kept coming to the computer and saying, "Mommy, can we see Daddy? Can we hear his voice?" And I had to tell them that he was in prison because he loved Jesus.
I love him so much. I love him and take good care of him and don't let him die and bring him home safely. Amen.
Don't forget us. We're your brothers and sisters. I say to you, please don't leave us. We need you.
I mean, I want you to think about the situation if you were a student, a Jewish student on a campus in the United States of America where you think you'd have freedom of religion, the free exercise of religion, or if you're a Christian student that's supporting your Jewish friends that want to talk about the issues, but instead you have students screaming at you in an open meeting to the Jewish students, Allah Akbar. You have in Chicago Jewish students needing police protection from pro-Palestinian students, Nazi symbols painted on Jewish fraternity houses, radical professors pledging to boycott Israeli scholars, academics, and punish Jewish students for saying a pro-Israel statement. And if you were a Christian student and saying a pro-Israel statement, you'd be punished as well. So this is what's going on in our nation's public school campuses right now. It's called the BDS movement. And it's boycott, divest, and sanction Israel. And I want to stand against that. And I need 100,000 of you to stand with me. And so far, I will say you are. 82,753,000 signatures alone. So almost 85,000 with phone calls. We want to get it to 100,000 by tomorrow. So aclj.org or 1-877-989-2255. If you haven't signed that petition yet, do it right now. aclj.org or 877-989-2255. I'm urging you to do that today. Jordan, let's take a phone call.
Yep, let's go right to the phones. Let's go to Ike in Maryland, online too. Ike, welcome to Jay Sekulow Live.
Hi, Ike.
Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
God bless you, your crew, and all that you
Thank
do.
you.
I just have a question for you, Jay, if you have the answer. Whatever happened with regard to the president asking Congress to send military help what happened to Mr. I have a pen and I have a cell phone executive order?
Well, don't worry, he's issuing plenty of executive orders. If you're asking what happened on the military, the statement yesterday, the authorization, some are calling it a late strategy move to more of a legal move than anything else. But there's also the sense that you're almost in kind of putting the next president in a very difficult spot, because the president keeps saying, for some reason, I don't understand why he's doing this. I mean, I think I do know why he's doing this, but he keeps saying we're not going to have ground troops, we're not going to have ground troops, we're not sending ground troops. We need overwhelming force against this enemy, overwhelming force against ISIS, 50,000 troops. And saying what you're not going to do is not how you get it there.
Well, no, that's exactly right. And you look at the most controversial parts of the president's authorization, or request for authorization of use of military force, the AUMF, and you've got a whole section about this new term of art, enduring offensive ground combat operations, that it doesn't allow for that. So it's a restrictive on that. Of course, that's something that's never been used before, so it's not a term that military legal analysts can go to and say, okay, this is exactly what this means. It's a new term of art. And the question is this: is the president really restricting himself, or is he trying to make it look like he's restricting himself? And either way, why? Why not just come out and say, give me the authority? Are we going to be in this bizarre situation where a president who loves expansive presidential power is going to the Congress, which he has done, and asks for a limitation on that power, and then Congress, a Republican-led Congress, may come back with a counterproposal and say, here, take more authority, you can have more decision-making power, and what, is the president going to veto that?
Let me play, this is a soundbite from President's statement just the other day.
The resolution we've submitted today does not call for the deployment of U.S. ground combat forces to Iraq or Syria. It is not the authorization of another ground war, like Afghanistan or Iraq.
Well, then what isn't an authorization of? Because we already been having airstrikes. So what exactly is the point of all this? So I think Jordan's right. This was a political statement that does not carry much weight. And the problem is the danger this is, it could literally handcuff the next president of the United States because this is a 3-year action, as what the president's saying. By the way, does anybody believe that if we utilized overwhelming force, does anybody that's listening believe that we could not eliminate this threat in a lot less than 3 years if we used overwhelming force against ISIS? But let's start using overwhelming force. I think we have this misconstrued notion of proportionality. You know, they do this, so we do that. No. Overwhelming U.S. and ally support to end the threat of ISIS. And in our own country, we need to end the threat of what's going on in these American schools through the legal system. That's the differential here. So what we're doing is defending those students, by the way, folks, literally from coast to coast. And we're going to continue this effort. We've got a whole team of lawyers at the ACLJ dedicated to this fight. Let's go ahead and take one call before the break, Jordan. Who do we have?
Sure, we go right to the phones, and let's go to Crystal calling from Texas on line 1. Crystal, welcome to Jay Sekulow Live.
Hi, Crystal.
Hi, how are you doing? Thank you so much for taking my call. First, I'd like to say the first thing, the whole thing about fear, you know what? I'm terrified even being on right now.
Oh, you're fine. You're doing well.
Everybody's afraid. Everybody's afraid of speaking out. That's the world that we're in right now.
And which is not the world we should be living in, but you're right. Go ahead, please.
Right now, I'm going through an issue with my daughter's school district. She's in 6th grade and here in Texas, and she came home with an entire 5-week course on Islam, which was supposed to be balanced. The top major religions, Islam, Christianity, and Judaism, and just the information alone was so unbalanced. I mean, it was probably about 80%, I would say 75-80% weighted towards Islam. And some of the tenets that they were teaching, the quote-unquote facts that they were teaching, is I know not what...
Well, let me tell you, Crystal, this is a problem not just in Texas, in school districts around the country. Political correctness in the curriculums have reached an epidemic proportion. And the courses on Islam, this is part and part. It's happening in Tennessee, Georgia. You'd be shocked where this is happening. Texas, you're telling us. Here's what I need you to go. Go to aclj.org. I want you to fill out on our website. There's a quick little form. Ask for legal help. We're going to get you some help on that right away. So go right over to aclj.org, and we'll get to work on the situation, make sure there's a balanced perspective here. Jordan, let's try to grab one more call here.
Yep, Tony calling from Colorado on line 4. Tony, welcome to Jay Sekulow Live.
Hi, Tony. Welcome to the broadcast. You're on the air.
Hi, Jay. Thanks a lot for taking a call. I got a question. Why is it we don't see the Muslims in the United States standing up and protesting and marching out against these brutality murders that's taking place overseas and this torture that's going on?
Well,
I don't see them standing up and protesting against this.
We just had Dr. Zuhdi Jasser on, who is definitely a reformist within the Muslim faith, and he'll tell you why. Jordan, you've talked to Zuhdi about this, and there's a reason. And Jordan, tell him what Zuhdi, what the concern is.
Well, one is fear. So there's a fear inside, and so that we've got to empower more people like Dr. Jasser who can speak out and are not afraid of the ramifications of that to some extent. They're able to be a voice. But two is it's a real problem. He's very honest about that when he talked about the boycott movement and the divestment movement, the sanctions movement against Israel. When he talked about the groups that are the most pervasive and the most well organized inside the American Islamic communities, and it is those groups that have more radical leanings. They may not go as far as ISIS, but they are certainly sympathetic to Islamists and Islamist organizations.
Yeah, and I think that presents, one of the key issues here that we have to recognize, and that is the cost of speaking out is really serious. It's a serious thing. So for Dr. Jasser to speak out is a big deal, and we're thrilled that he comes on our broadcast. I'm thrilled when he's on with us on Fox News. He is a reasoned voice and is fighting for his people and for his country. This is a guy who's a lieutenant commander in the United States Navy, so he speaks from a wealth of experience, and we're thrilled that he was on our broadcast. We do want you to sign on to this petition, aclj.org or 1-877-989-2255. That's aclj.org or 877-989-2255. Let me urge you to sign the petition for these Jewish students. Here's why. Number one, I want to get to 100,000. We've got legislation moving. We're moving with various school universities and school systems, but we need your help. And it's aclj.org or 1-877-989-2255. It's to end the discrimination and to protect these Jewish students. Said the scripture's clear. We got to bless those that bless thee, curse those that curse thee. We got to stand with the Jewish people in this fight. Folks, this could be my family that's the subject of this stuff, so I take this really personal. aclj.org or 1-877-989-2255. I don't want my grandchildren growing up in a world where this happens. You don't either. aclj.org or 877-989-2255. Sign on to that petition now. Let's fight for freedom for these students. These Jewish students should not have swastikas on their fraternity houses. And the Department of Justice nowhere to be seen. So we've got to now take action. We're going to urge you to join us in this fight. aclj.org to sign that petition for these Jewish students to end the discrimination, or 1-877-989-2255.
There's a disturbing development occurring at our nation's colleges and universities. Jewish students are under attack on America's campuses. In California, Muslim students chant Allah Akbar at Jewish students at an open meeting. In Chicago, Jewish students need police protection from pro-Palestinian students. Nazi symbols are painted on a Jewish fraternity. Radical professors pledge to boycott Israel scholars and punish Jewish students. Our universities are overrun with anti-Israel propaganda. At the ACLJ, we're fighting for Jewish students on campus, winning cases and stopping boycotts. But it's time the Obama administration stepped up. It's time the Obama administration's Department of Education enforced the law to protect American Jews from violence, intimidation, and unlawful discrimination. Add your name to our petition now. Call 1-877-989-2255. That's 1-877-989-2255, or add your name online, aclj.org.